What up, though? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lawrence Report. And on tonight's broadcast, we're discussing episode 7 of BMF. And y'all, I gotta give a big shout out to the man himself. I'm talking about Charles, aka Mr. Russell Hornsberry himself. He just directed this episode and he absolutely killed it with the directing of this episode. We have so much going on with this episode tonight. I mean, my goodness, we got Meech trying to set up shop out there in St. Louis. We got Terry, having women trouble as well. We're also trying to set up something with Henrietta's daddy. We got Detective Jen going undercover. We got Nicole taking weapons to school. And of course, we got the romantic relationship of Lucille and Dr. Maurice, which is getting hot and steamy in the back of that car, if you know what I mean. Let's get into it, y'all. So I was in deep thought, and I was thinking about this after I saw this episode. And Meech even said this himself. We ended up meeting this guy by name of Carter, right? And Carter is Jay Push's little brother, right? And Carter, he is really, really talented in baseball. And when Meech, like I said, Meech even said this one about to say himself. He talked about how his partner, Rip, kind of got caught up, and I just think about all of the men, all the black men who was talented back in the day, but they got caught up on the wrong side of the drug deal. I mean, some of these guys are great in sports, music. They could have went on to be teachers, like just great heroes of the community, but they just got caught up on the wrong side of things. So that was just on my mind. It's like, man, there was so many great men, so many great black men who had dreams, but it didn't happen in the future because of the stuff that they was unfortunately entangled with, right? So that's just some of my deep thoughts I want to share. It just on my mind to share that right there. But let's get into BMF. Now we see in this episode, I love the beginning of this episode. We got Detective Brian. He's teaching Meech about trying to get home. And sometimes it's not always about the home run. He teaches him that sometimes you can, bat the ball, and that still is going to secure you being able to get home. Now, we got a special guest on this episode. I'm talking about the tap, tap, tap in princess herself, Sweetie, aka Little Slugger. She is there with Carter, Meech, and Jay Pusher, right? So they're all playing baseball. If you know anything about baseball in St. Louis, shout out to Nelly. He definitely put St. Louis on the map. He always talk about how much people in St. Louis love baseball, right? So they're playing baseball, and we got this little sibling rivalry between Jay Pusher and Carter, right? And after they finish talking their junk to each other, he tells his brother Carter to go get them some water, right? So again, Meech is trying to set up shop, trying to network in St. Louis, right? But while Carter is going to get the water, he ends up getting captured into a van. So now Carter is missing. Of course, Jay Push is freaking out, and they're on a hunt to actually find the brother. And they end up getting caught up with one of the dealers that they was working with, right? The dealer's like, yo, Jay Pusher, you sold us this bad weight, and we decided to take your brother. You knew what was going on this weight. You tried to play us, right? So, Meech is trying to talk some sense into Jay Pusher, right? But he's like, listen, I can't bow down to these dudes right here. They're going to think I'm a sissy out here on these streets, right? So again, Meech has already been there. Meech is even telling him this guy is all about pride. Calm down. But Jay Pusher's like, no. This is my city. This is my brother. We're doing it my way, which is going to be bad doing it his way. Let's get into Charles, Lucille, and I'm also going to tie in Dr. Maurice with what I'm about to say together, right? So there is a package of flowers, right? They're basically sent to the house in which Lucille and Charles live at. They are from Dr. Maurice. And Dr. Maurice is extremely ballsy for doing this right here. I mean, think about it. How you gonna, be trying to make late phone calls, and then you're gonna send flowers to the lady that you're trying to sleep with to her house where her husband is currently there? That is wild in itself. But he does that. And like I said, it's very ballsy. So Charles, he gets the flowers, right? He gets the package. And he reads it, and I think it's talking about dinner. We're going to have filet mignon tonight, right? And Lucille comes downstairs. She sees the package. She says, oh, Charles. I guess she thought it was from Charles at first, but it's actually from Dr. Maurice, right? And they had this big argument going back and forth. And we know that Lucille, she had these children early. And this happens to, sometimes a lot of women when they have the children so early in life that they end up losing, and what I believe, the fun parts of their life, right? And I think this is what we're seeing with Lucille right now. And, her and Charles going at it. And she's like, listen, this marriage, this relationship has been dry for a long time, especially if you're not trying to water it, right? And, Charles like, what about all those furs and stuff and all those clothes you already got? And Lucille's like, well, every time you buy and get money, you always buying it on tools. So they was going back and forth. And Lucille's like, listen, you and Dr. Maurice are trying to have some type of childhood grudge match between who I'm going to choose, but ultimately I will decide who I will choose. And we do see her later on this episode getting ready. She's going out to get with Dr. Maurice, and they're getting hot and heavy in this back seat. And he even tells her that eventually she is going to have to choose, but right now Lucille just wants to have fun. Let's talk about Terry. Right now, Terry, he is sitting in his cafe with his crew, and one of his young boys comes in with this old antique gun. Even Terry called it that himself. And the young boy's like, yo, let's go to war. Terry's like, listen, I know we want to get our revenge back on Henry for what she did to Diz, but we need to use more strategy. But nobody in the crew is really trying to hear that. Everybody's wanting to go out guns blazing with, well, I should say against Henry, right? But Terry lets him know that, listen, I'm going to set up a meeting with Blaze. Blaze is going to come on to my territory, into my restaurant, my cafe, and we're going to talk to him face to face, men to men. So they do set up the arrangement with Blaze, right? And Blaze comes in with a gift, right? He says, this is for your newborn. And Terry tells him, I thought we had a deal. And from there, Blaze is like, well, Henrietta, she's a wild card. And he's like, if you can't control her, I see you basically as being a part of the problem. So Terry is trying to get Blaze to realize that, listen, if you cannot control Henry, she is your offspring. We may have to eliminate you and Henry at the same time. That could be an option. I don't know if he wants to go to war with Blaze, but if he does, that's going to be even more craziness to this story. Now, let's circle back to Meech and Jay Pusha, right? So now we're at the residence of Jay Pusha's residence where he lives at with his mother, and there's a package that's delivered to his mother's residence. In this package, we see Carter's finger, and the mother's like, listen, my son's baseball dreams are in the air because of what he's caught up in. And Jay Push is telling his mama he's gonna do everything he can to get his brother back, right? And the dealers that Jay Push is working with, they end up making a phone call to him. It's like, yo, did you receive the package? Jay Push is like, yeah, I received it, but I want to let y'all know, y'all dead man walking, basically, right? So he tells his crew, put a bounty on these guys' head, and whatever it takes, they gotta bring Carter home. And this all because of, a bad drug deal, some bad weight that was just not as pure as they thought it should have been, right? So we see Meech, he tells Jay Push, like, listen, I got the purest weight. I can make a phone call. I can make it happen for you. So he ends up calling Terry, and Terry's like, listen, I thought we was going to take care of our own stuff, right? But Meech is like, listen, I need you in this right here. I need you to help deliver this weight. And even I love how Terry said this, right? He said, Captain save a, I believe he said, Captain save a bro. And he does a lot of times come to the rescue of Meech because, Meech is constantly in others people's business, other people's mess. So I completely understand from where Terry's coming from. So a new package is on its way to hopefully be delivered, but we see that it's not going to happen because the guy who's supposed to be delivering that weight ends up crashing the vehicle. So some of Jay Pusha's men, they do end up finding out where Carter is at, right? So they end up breaking into the house and they're trying to rescue Carter. There's a shootout that's going on, But unfortunately, those two men escape, and also Carter is left, seeing to run away with these men. So Carter is still on the loose, and they're still hunting to find out where Carter is, despite a bounty being on these dudes right here. Boy, my boy Terry. Speaking of my boy Terry, he is caught in between two worlds when it comes to LaWanda and Markeisha. So he decides to pay a visit to his family because, so much that's been going on with him. He needed a mental break, right? And while he's there, you got LaWanda's mother there, you got Lucille, and you got LaWanda herself. And the ladies are not happy with him, right? And even his mother is like, listen, I don't understand why you still dealing with this cradle robber, aka Markeisha, right? And she lets him know that, listen, these babies, they have your bloodline, right? Not Markeisha. Like, she just a hit it and quit it type woman. Like, what do you see in her? And for LaWanda, she's tired. Like any new mother would be, right? You're tired. You're with these children all night. You're not getting that much rest. And what she wants from Terry, she doesn't care about the gifts that he's bringing. She doesn't care about the van, the house, nothing like that. She don't care about the furs. She just wants time. She wants time. She wants him to be there at home with her at night. So, most parents, they rotate, whenever a children's crying, like you sleep 30 minutes, I sleep 30 minutes, whatever the case may be, they rotate. But that is not happening with them. So everybody is against Terry, and Terry even calls out his mother, right? He says, well, my sister let me know that you were sleeping around with Dr. Maurice. And Lucille kind of may seem like a hypocrite here and there, because she even says, well, you're just like your daddy, aka Charles. So that whole ordeal, everybody was going with each other back and forth. So I hate it for Terry, but that is the bed or beds that he decided to lay in. I've always said, and this is nothing new to nobody, that Nicole is the one that is really holding the family dynamic together, right? But even Nicole has to face her own problems, right? If we remember in the previous seasons, Nicole was in love with a boy. I think his name was Darius. I believe that was his name. Darius ended up getting killed, right? But there is a weapon that Nicole ends up bringing to school, right? She's going through a metal detector, and they end up finding the weapon. And the young boy who Nicole has been infatuated with, he tries to claim that it was his weapon, but we all know the weapon even said Charles Flannery on it, right? I think it was, I want to say it was a knife or pocket knife or something like that, right? And Nicole basically is taking this weapon with her because she's dealing with the trauma of her former loved one, Darius, passing away. I mean, just think of a little 13-year-old, 15-year-old girl seeing somebody that you love die. Anybody will be dealing with that type of trauma. So her parents are called to the school, and her parents are like, listen, I thought we talked about this, but Nicole's like, listen, we haven't talked about this. Like, I ain't been to no therapist or nothing like that. I'm still dealing with this death right here. Not to mention Nicole, she knows that her brothers are dealing, with the drugs, and her parents are going through these marriage problems. So it's a lot of mental gymnastics that Nicole is going through right now. So my heart goes out to her. She is definitely in need of being able to talk to someone, to talk to a counselor or something of that nature. I did not see this right here. Detective Jen is about to do a little dance with the devil herself, Henrietta. Detective Jen, she's very emotional in this episode. She's talking to her father, saying, I don't say I love you enough, and things of that nature right there. And she ends up meeting up with Brian, right? And she is doing her homework on Henrietta. And she tells Brian, that Henry and Blaze are in this thing together. Nothing new that Brian didn't already know, right? So Brian is now saying, yeah, well, Blaze is kind of protected by the politics of the city. So taking him down by the books is going to be hard. So Detective Jen is like, listen, how about we do it another way? So she decides to go undercover, and she has on this blonde wig, and she is basically seducing Henrietta, right? Henrietta ain't never seen nothing like this coming to her little gambling parlor, right? Because Detective Jen, aka I'm gonna start calling her Fine China, because she is looking exotic, she's different from what Henrietta sees. So they're talking to each other and all that stuff, and she reports back to Brian, and Brian almost didn't recognize her because of the blonde wig, but she gets enough intel about Henrietta, and she even says this right here that I'm going to put Henrietta into um, Detective Kobe's handcuffs whenever she is finally able to arrest her. So Brian's like, yo, you was crazy for doing that on your own with no backup, but next time you do that, you definitely need to call for backup. I probably should ride with you, which I think them two pretty much are going to team up, for the rest of the episode, try to take down Henrietta themselves. So, Detective Jen, you're walking a dangerous, dangerous line. The one thing that I do love about Terry, this man is willing to make a backroom deal. And he does that right here with these guys right here. He's like, listen, I know how much you guys love a bargain. I'm still willing to help whip y'all work. Because Henry, once we get rid of her, I'm still going to be in charge of running this weight right here. I'm about to flip the script. 7,000 is nothing. I got y'all. And eventually these guys, they decide to join Terry in his crusade when it comes to them bargaining this weight right here to make it a little bit cheaper. And he also tells these guys, listen, if you come join me, you ain't gotta worry about watching over your back every second looking for Henry. So they do decide to join Terry. Now, unfortunately, the first delivered package for the weight didn't go as well as everybody thought it was going to go, but Meech is like, listen, I got a backup plan, right? And of course, Jay is absolutely angry that it didn't work out. He even shares about his baseball dreams that he even had himself. And Terry's like, listen, Meech is like, listen, I got you. Do not worry. So he receives a phone call. I'm talking about Jay Pusher receives a phone call. And the phone call is saying, listen, they got Carter at this park, but Franklin is with them, but Franklin have passed away. So he ended up going to the park this apartment complex, basically trying to find Carter. And they end up seeing a dead body there. It was Franklin. But they also see these Chinese food boxes. Now, these Chinese food boxes are going to be a key in finding out the guys who have Carter. I have not talked about her yet, but I'm about to do it now. I'm talking about the one and only Markeisha. Now, Markeisha decides to make a peace offering. She ends up bringing over some presents to LaWanda's babies. And LaWanda's mother's there. She's like, you are very ballsy for coming over here to visit my home, right? And Markeisha is letting LaWanda know that it's probably best that we just go ahead and prepare to share Terry, because I ain't letting nobody get in between us. And LaWanda's like, you think you're a better woman? Well, listen, I got those same furs that you got. And she pulls out all those furs, and LaWanda's like, it is what it is. I ain't letting go of Terry either. So those two are in a big squabble when it comes to Terry, and she ends up kicking her out. She ends up kicking Markeisha out of her house, right? And the mama absolutely had me dying in this episode. She's talking about when it came to her getting rid of them furs, the mom's like, whoa, hold on now. So the mom had me dying. But Markeisha, man, she's a black widow. She is a black widow. As Markeisha is leaving LaWanda's house, she ends up getting pulled over. I think she failed to stop to a sign. And she knows that the security guard, the policeman is actually a guy by the name of Vince. Vince used to basically be a security guard for Boone, right? So we already know the way Markeisha looked at Vince, they had some vibes going on from back in the day. He's like, listen, I got to give you this ticket. But it turns out that the ticket is actually his phone number. So Markeisha is going to use Vince, we know, to make Terry jealous. They're going to be at this nightclub and she's going to see Vince there, but she also has Terry there. But I think that this is some type of kink for her to let Terry know that there are other men out here who want me, so you better get your act together and forget all about LaWanda. So that was kind of smart, in my personal opinion, of the Black Widow herself, Markeisha, to do this right here. But of course, Terry and Vince are going to have some type of beef. We saw that in the promo coming up for the next episode. So yeah, Markeisha, walking dangerous territory. You got your man versus a op. So we're gonna see how that's gonna turn out. Well, even though the first package, was not delivered the way they wanted, Meech's boy comes in clutch. He ends up having the package that they need, but they're hanging out. It looks like in the projects, and unfortunately, there is about to be some type of drug bust that's going on because we see all these cops come, and they end up fleeing away with the package. But before they can even flee away with the package, there is a roadblock that is ahead of them, and Meech thinks on his feet very, very quickly. One of the things I always loved about him, he's asking the cop about, the St. Louis Cardinals practice facility. And of course, we know that this is a fancy car that these guys are driving, right? And in the real world, they probably would never get away with what they just did. But again, we understand what's going on. And the cop told them, well, you go up here, you make this right turn, I think he said, and that's how you get to the facility. But keep in mind, the drugs, the product, it was successfully handled thanks to Meech's boy coming in the clutch. Keep in mind, I said that those Chinese food boxes that we saw earlier were going to be a very important key into finding Carter, right? And, Meech, his boy, and the little slugger himself, I'm talking about Sweetie, they end up finding out and tracking down this guy right here. We know that he loves Chinese. And they end up pulling up on old buddies like, yo, where's Carter at? Meech is like, listen, I'm willing to make a deal with you. If you let us know where Carter's at, I may can help you escape out of the loo. And the guy's like, okay, cool. I didn't want to ever get involved with this, but I'm going to confess to where Carter is. But of course, before he can even do all that, his boy and Slugger, aka Sweetie, they end up getting some licks on old boy. And that is rightfully so for capturing Carter. So the deal that was actually made was actually good because this deal basically helped secure Carter's freedom. At the end, we see Carter is finally rescued. He is brought home and he is welcomed with open arms. And Jay is like, listen, why didn't you ask me to go with you? Meech is like, listen, I got it handled. I made a deal. It is good. But at the same time, the money that you do have from the deals, you need to take this money and send Carter far, far away from this stuff right here. And I love how Slugger, aka Sweetie, basically said that the baseball player, Mordecai, I can't think of his last name, but Mordecai, even though he was missing a couple fingers himself, he still became a great baseball player. So hopefully, Carter is definitely going to go on to college and become a great baseball player, and hopefully make it to the pros. And Meech is telling him, he's telling Jay, like, listen, don't worry about old buddy. I got it taken care of. He's sitting out of here. He's not in the loo no more. Meech is like, yo, I need a favor from you, though, since I brought home your brother. I need a place to set up shop. And of course, Slugger, aka Sweetie, when she heard those words, so you can back here for a minute. Of course, Meech and her to get it on. It is what it is from there. So now it looks like Meech is going to be back and forth between Atlanta and St. Louis. Back at the diner, towards the end, we end up seeing Terry and his partner here, and he's letting his partner know that I flipped the last of Henrietta's clientele, and that this one right here is for Diz. We doing it for Diz, and things are going to come up. We are about to cut off Medusa's head finally. And also Meech ends up taking a trip from St. Louis back to the A. His whole crew is there. They love that right there. They embrace him, and now he feels that since he hit a home run out there in St. Louis, he may hit a couple more home runs here in the A. So that's how BMF ends. My favorite scenes right there from this episode had to be, with them finally rescuing Carter, with his dreams finally, going forward, hopefully. And Lucille, the whole Lucille Dr. Murray storyline, that was great. I love the Nicole storyline with her and that young man. That was another great storyline itself. So those are just some of my, and shout out to the Slugger herself, talking about Sweetie. She was in there at the end, swinging that bat. Love that right there. So those are my favorite scenes of this episode, BMF. So as always, y'all, I can't wait to see what's going to happen on the next episode. As always, thank you for tuning in to The Lawrence Report.